Hello everyone. So today I wanted to discuss quite a unique book by Abhijit Banerjee, winner of the Nobel Prize in Economics. This book is called Chhaunk on food, economics and society. What is this book about? It's about these three things: food, economics, and how it relates to the society, particularly Indian society. And food, particularly in India and even worldwide, it forms our identity also. What type of food we eat and how we eat it, and that is the main theme in this. Also, the author here is a foodie, a big foodie, I think, and he's also a chef. He likes to make food for himself and others also. So this is primarily, I think, a recipe book. So this is some 300 pages book, and I'll just show you the index of this book, the contents. Sorry, I forgot to explain what chhaunk means. The chhaunk is pronounced like this in English. It's called tadka or vaghar in Gujarati and foron, I think, in Bengali. Right, it's a process of tempering to finish a dish in Indian cooking. It involves spices being put in hot oil to create an extra layer of flavor. So this book, the structure of this book is such that it's divided into three parts, right? Economics and psychology, economics and culture, and economics and social policy. And food is discussed in almost every chapter. How food is connected like a thread through all these chapters, through all these parts. So here I've written that there are roughly 3 recipes per chapter for this book. So roughly there are 72 or even more recipes in this book, right? And these are just short essays. There are 8 essays per part. So it will give you some 24 essays on these themes, and more than, I think, 80 or 90 recipes. So I'll just show you just randomly. For example, this is one of the chapters, energy efficient eating. And yes, this book is illustrated by this person here, Cheyenne Olivier. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. I didn't quite like the illustrations here, the style. The details are fascinating, but the style I didn't quite like it. But okay, this is the chapter, right? Energy efficient eating, and this is how he discusses the chapter in three and a half pages, and then there are recipes. So bhate bhat is one recipe. Then okay, this chapter had just one recipe. I'll show you just another part. Let me just tell you what was in this chapter. So basically, one of the hacks that in this chapter was that if you are cooking, let's say using a cooker, or you are boiling something. So just if let's say you are boiling something and you place some containers, some katoris on top of the plate which is covering the vessel, utensil. So basically he's saying you should use the heating properly, more efficiently. It will boil the stuff inside the container, inside the vessel, and the stuff on the containers in the katoris which is above the utensil. So this is just simple chapter. So that will reduce the energy consumption per household. I'll just show you some other example. For this is part 2, economics and culture. So here, for example, I'll show you. First chapter here is why give gifts. Yes, this is one of my favorite essays here. So economically, rationally, one might argue that the gift giving is quite unnecessary. You choose a gift and then you give it to the person. They may or may not like it, and instead more efficient would be just to give them cash or money, and so they can buy it for themselves. So but here he argues very beautifully, the author. He uses the argument of this French anthropologist Marcel Mauss, and in his essay The Gift, that basically we are always exchanging gifts, be it just an unexpected smile or a few kind words, right? And the social account needs to stay open, like a bank account. There needs to be the easy possibility of another round of exchange in the future. So that's why a gift is not just an object that we give. It's basically a way for us to connect with others, and then The point of the everyday gift is to make the more essential exchanges possible in the future, right? So festivals like Christmas, Eid, Durga Puja, these are special occasions. So because it allows us to, get over the awkwardness of giving someone some new wrapped gifts and showing or expressing our, feelings towards them. So these occasions are necessary. So it's a good chapter on why we should give. So the structure I was showing you, just an example. This was why give gifts, and he discusses the chapter in 3-4 pages, the essay, and then there are recipes. Here there is shira recipe and date and tahini ball. So this is the structure of the book. Now let's go back to the index, and I'll just discuss some of the essays which I liked. So part 1 is economics and psychology, part 2 is economics and culture, part 3 is economics and social policy. So he moves from the individual mind to people around them, which forms societal bonds and culture, to social policy, to the state itself, right? Individual to the state. And some of the essays which I liked were like this one, Women and Work. The author is arguing that the labor force participation rate of women in India is quite low because first reason is quite obvious. Women are getting married earlier, whereas in other countries they are just entering the workforce, they are exploring more opportunities. And the second, the more pernicious reason is the social image problem in India. There is a conservative mindset, and women and young girls are basically not allowed to explore opportunities after they complete their education. So that is one of the main hurdles, according to the author and his mother's work. He is referring his mother's work here in this essay. It's quite an important essay, I think. Next is this essay, Cultural Capital. So basically here he is arguing the kind of debates we see about merit and affirmative action even in US or in India. So he is basically arguing here that when we talk about merit, we usually just focus on the academic merit, how good a student is at studying or passing exams, whatever. But family background is one of the most important factors in which makes the person who he is, who he or she is. So he gives his own example, basically, that him and his brothers and sisters were quite literate, and then his parents were also quite big academicians. So at the dinner table, when all of them would sit together to have a simple meal, they would basically be exposed to so many new ideas just for fun. And so that stimulates the mind, that stimulates the thinking, and that sort of thinking you cannot find in poor slums in the society. So that forms the cultural capital of the person. So these types of capital basically we ignore, right, when we are talking about meritocracy and these debates. So in some recent Supreme Court judgment also, the word used there was social capital. The kind of manners, the kind of discussions that you have with your friends, with your family, or with even in the neighborhood that you live, that exposure that you get as a child, that also forms a huge part of your personality and your cognitive mindset also, your problem solving mindset, your creative thinking. These are all parts of cultural capital. Not everything can be learned from books. So this is a very good chapter. Next is this Mangoes and Manners, also a quite interesting chapter, where the author is discussing the Victorian era mindset that we have currently, worldwide also, that how should the table manners be and how we see other people, how we eat. Like I said in the introduction, our identity is what we eat and how we eat, and we tend to judge people around that. In India, it's quite a big issue. If, let's say, I think a foreigner comes and if they see that many people eat with their hands, so they might get disgusted by it, but it's part of the culture and it's not related to hygiene, because people wash their hands before and after also. So but this is the kind of Victorian era mindset that we have, and the author beautifully discusses the evolution of the Victorian era habits also, of table manners in England, how they evolved. I was disgusted to read this, because in England, the author mentions that the elites, they would sit at the dinner table, they would eat with their food on the table. There was no plates, the food was kept on the table. They would eat with their hands, they would share the drinking cups among themselves. So, and there are even more disgusting things there, but eventually when some purity standards came, so they started to cleanse themselves of these habits. But that's the point here, that these manners, the author argues that there are already so many divisions in the society. Why to divide people based on such Victorian era habits also, based on caste and class also. So this was a very good chapter. Next, let's come to this part 2, economics and culture. So here I have made a loop of economics affecting culture, culture affecting economics, and Weber and Marx I have written, because in this introduction the author has argued that in academic circles, basically there is a debate of whether economics forms the culture of a society or is it the other way around. So Max Weber, the German thinker, he thought that no, it is the culture, and obviously it was the Protestant culture of Christianity that affected the economics, the capitalist mindset. I think he wrote a book about it, right? The Protestant ethic and capitalism. And Marx, on the other hand, also a German thinker, he thought the opposite way, that it is the type of economics that defines the culture of a society. I don't remember the absolute terms, but I think he mentioned some superstructure and these type of things. So, so these debates keep going on in academic circles. So the point of this whole book was that the author has basically looked at our society, particularly Indian society, and he is trying to reconcile it with the high mindset of academic circles or some theories in the economic circles, and how well they translate into real life on ground, whether they make any sense in the Indian context or not. So here the author basically had argued that it is kind of like a loop. You cannot say which came first. That's what I understood from this chapter. So I think I have already discussed this one, why give gifts, right? I will just show you. Let's discuss. Yeah, this is quite good essay. One Chinese, many Chinas. In India, Chinese is also, I think spelt or pronounced as Chinese sometimes. And so just a small observation here, that Hakka noodles, which are very popular in North India, at least I think in the whole of India, Hakka noodles. So Hakka was basically a Chinese community which was present in East India, and it meant guests, which is quite unique, and it meant either guests or migrants from China into India. So it is the name of the community which gave Hakka noodles. And he also discussed Chinese foreign policy, and many Chinas here. The many Chinas here refers basically to how the Chinese premier, Xi Jinping, he keeps presenting such a strong image of China, but it's basically just to keep the internal regions of China, particularly the boundary regions which are away from the center, from mainland China, so that they basically remain a whole. So a lot of posturing is basically just to dissolve those tensions which are internally inside China. So that was being discussed here. Next, let's discuss this thrift and indulgence and landscapes and foodscapes. These are very beautiful essays. So the main theme here was basically that creativity comes from constraints in regions which were overpopulated, like China, Japan, India. And if there were resource scarcity or huge scale poverty, then people come up with new innovations with the resources that they have, with the scarce resources that they have, they come up with new cuisines, rich cuisines. So basically that's why these cuisines taste better, because the people here basically valued each ingredient more. And I cannot say for US, but the author seems to say that the US foods suck. They don't taste so good. And the reason was that the early immigrants into United States, they basically saw everything in abundance. Almost everything grows there, and they didn't experiment much. That's what I got from this chapter. I haven't tasted any US food, so I cannot say. But the constraints and creativity part I understand. And in this thrift and indulgence also, the example he gave was of Tamil curd rice. I've written here Tamil curd rice 3 times is a function of time. How? So it was the author's observation at first that he saw that some Tamilian was eating curd rice 3 times, in the single day. So morning, afternoon, and evening. The same curd rice he was eating with achar, with pickles. So the author thought at first that how can he eat like this? The same food 3 times. How can someone eat? Don't they get bored? But when the author tried it for himself, he observed that actually when you prepare curd rice in the morning and you eat it with this pickle, the fermentation process hasn't begun. So it throughout the day the fermentation occurs, and the taste of this curd rice changes slightly hour by hour. So the food that you ate at morning will taste different from what you ate at afternoon, and it will taste different from what you eat at night. So this simple observation, it changed his mindset. So that was discussed here. I didn't know this about curd rice fermentation. That it drastically changed the food taste so much. I didn't know this. So this was unique. And coming to the last part, economics and social policy, this is probably the most, many themes here are quite dark for this book. For example, in this chapter, lessons from Imambara. Imambara is a place in Lucknow, in Uttar Pradesh. And so here he basically was discussing this Manrega scheme that India has. It's kind of a labor employment scheme by the government. So the government basically asks if people are willing to work, and government will provide some money for it, and their work will be used for some productive work like building roads or highways or something. And so people who are looking for work will actually get work employed by the state. So these types of schemes are quite effective in India for a developing country like India. And the dignity of poor and free market schemes. So actually when this scheme was being proposed in I think 2008, many people were arguing against it. The free market ideologues that the state should not basically enter into the such employment schemes. But actually when COVID-19 happened, a lot of these rural people lost jobs, right? And at that time, since instantly these employment opportunities were not available, Manrega scheme came for their rescue. So these types of schemes are actually quite useful. And the author here basically discussed also the famine deaths that had occurred during the British rule in India, and people in their high positions were basically just arguing whether free market policies are better or whether dignity of poor should be respected and some employment should be given. And so the point I think from this whole essay was that while these economists keep discussing in their cozy chambers, people on ground are getting affected, right? So every action and inaction has a huge consequence, especially in India. So this was being discussed here. Next, let's come to this income guarantee also, because at that time when the book was written, a universal basic income was a theme here. So the author is basically arguing that it could work for boosting consumption and giving people a sort of safety net, and to go out and seek work also. I don't know if it will be effective or not, but that's what he's arguing. Then let's just discuss one more, unfair imprisonments. So this was also quite a good chapter. Here, basically, the author himself had, gone to jail in 1983 as a part of some student protest. So he was discussing how unfair the treatment of prisoners is in India, and depending on their caste and class. So in his example, it was class, right? And he was educated, he was a student. So according to the Indian Penal Code, if you were a postgraduate, right, so you were entitled to vegetables also, in addition to the 2-time meal that was being provided at the prisons. So, but if you are a graduate, then you are not eligible for the vegetables. So see, such illiberal policies, such illogical policies are there. Because they were basically, again, Indian Penal Code was made during British time. So that was his experience. But even more, distressing situation is about the people imprisoned today in Indian prisons. Basically, the author discusses that more than 50% of the people are from scheduled caste, scheduled tribe communities or Muslim communities. They are mostly illiterate, so they don't even know what crime they had committed or what procedures to follow. And the under trials, the process of under trial in India is, the system itself is a punishment, right? So many of them have been in prison for more than 10 years, even though the crime, if they had done the crime, the punishment would have been less than 10 years. So such sort of unfair imprisonment basically occurs in our society. So these were some of the important essays from this book. I think I should discuss this last essay also, if you're interested. Conspicuous consumption. So Thomas Veblen was an economist, and his theory was basically why some sort of products, even if you increase their prices, people don't decrease their demand for those prices. Best example I can give you is the current iPhone trend in India. People are buying those iPhones on EMIs, even if they don't have the money at present. They are willing to buy it simply because it's a status symbol. So, or it's perceived to be a status symbol, right? So this sort of consumption, it goes on in India. But this was not the theme for which I have put 5 stars here. This chapter also shed some light on the horrific tradition that was present in India before independence. This was called the Dola Pratha. It was prevalent in regions of Bihar, Uttarakhand, and basically what happened was that there were zamindars, feudal landlords, and in most of the villages, and the bride, the newly married bride, would have her first night with the zamindar, with the landlord. This sort of practice was present there in Bihar. So this distressed me a lot. I had never heard of it, but zamindars here, and similar practice was there in Haryana also. It was called Kola Pratha. So that was practiced by the Mughals against the poorer sections of the society. So when the constitution came and it abolished the zamindar protection, then these sort of practices were removed. But still there are there in many villages in Bihar. So the point here was that the author basically was arguing that in India the poor have been trampled upon, abused for so long. And the examples that he was giving was, one of these was this horrific, Dola Pratha, that zamindars basically exploited the poor in this way also. This manner I didn't know, and this was very disheartening to read. So, I'm ending this review on a very sad note, but that's what I liked about this book also, that it didn't shy away from the dark themes of this society, of Indian society, and somehow food is the connecting thread for all these chapters. So each chapter, like I told you, has some 3 or 4 recipes. So I don't think I'll ever finish this book, in the sense that I'll have to try out all the recipes also. but there are so many recipes and from various regions, veg, non-veg, from different countries, Morocco, Nepal. I don't know how many countries he referred here. For example, Bengali beef curry, chicken dalhousie, So these are the recipes. So that was the book basically. I've given you the structure of the books, the ideas that were discussed here, and let me know if you like this review and this book. And okay, thank you.